Good evening, I'm Mark Oristano, and there is method to my costume madness. First of all, I'm here to speak about Jerry the sports fan, so it fits in that regard. And secondly, I'm hoping to prove true the wisdom of the line from the famous movie that there is no crying in baseball. Maybe then I can get through this. Jerry was a great sports fan, and I often used to kid him that my first employments at Stage West probably were because he wanted a sportscaster to hang out with. And only incidentally later on they found out I could actually act. Jerry loved all sports, football, basketball, baseball, everything, but baseball was his special passion, the Texas Rangers and baseball. And I think that baseball appealed to Jerry because at his core, Jerry was a storyteller. Jerry loved a good story, a joke, a 5-act play, a 1-0 pitcher's duel. Jerry loved a good story. And he understood the brilliance of the great sports writer Red Smith's line that baseball is only dull to dull minds. And Jerry did not have a dull mind. Jerry appreciated the two great truths of baseball. The first is that every baseball game is a story that unfolds with twists and turns and changes on pitch after pitch after pitch. And the second great truth is they serve beer. Jerry was very competitive. I know Wendy wrote an article in the Star-Telegram several years ago about his competitive side, including the cutthroat croquet games they used to have at their house. He was also competitive on stage. Jim said that he made you raise your game as an actor, but there was also some competition involved. Many, many years ago now, we were rehearsing what still remains my favorite show I've ever done in theater, Glengarry Glen Ross, in, thank you fans of the F word, and we were rehearsing in the front room, but let me also as an aside here just add that whatever success I've attained as an actor is almost solely due to what I learned at Stage West working with Jerry and with Jim Copel. I say that flat out. If you don't know Glengarry, the first act has 3 scenes. In the first scene, Jerry's character was on with the sales manager of the real estate office where we were all cutthroat salesmen. Jerry's in the first scene, my character's in the second scene with another salesman, and then there's a third scene. We're rehearsing in the front room. And when you rehearse, you do lots of physical, mental, emotional things to try to find out who your character is. And we're rehearsing this scene with me and the wonderful actor G.B. Ritchie, who played opposite me. And everybody else is just watching in the back. Jim was directing. And the mammoth juices are flowing. Man, we're hot. We're cooking. Those lines are coming one after another, and the stakes are being raised. And all of a sudden, I found myself pointing at GB like this, like hook 'em horns, except I was doing this. Like, you're going to do what I tell you. You're going to rob the office. You're going to steal the leads. F word, F word, F word. And it felt really powerful. It felt really good. And I made a note to myself to keep that. I liked that. Flash forward to opening night. Jerry's on first. You're way ahead of me. And I'm standing in the wings to see how his scene is going and how the show is opening, and they're really flying. Jerry's out there with another Jerry Crow. And Jerry's, you got to give me better leads. I can't make a lead. Yeah, these leads stink. I need more. I need more. And all of a sudden, he starts pointing at Jerry Crow. And I'm standing backstage, and I realize now I can't do this because if I do it, the audience is going to think that I stole it from Jerry. True story. One quick non-sports story, because it's my favorite Jerry story, and it's very meaningful to me. I did a lot of shows at Stage West in the 80s and the early 90s, and if you ask Jim or Susie or even Leonard, I was back in those days ready to argue with everybody about anything at any given time. I had a terrible problem with authority figures. And then in 1994, I had what I call my vacation from reality, where I went into a hospital, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, treated for that, came to terms with the fact that I grew up in an alcoholic family. The usual story, right? Nobody goes into show business because they had a happy childhood. I didn't work with Jerry again until 2001 at Shakespeare in the Park in Fort Worth. We were doing The Tempest. And after the show one night, we're sitting backstage having a beer, just unwinding, and Jerry says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "You used to be such an asshole. What happened?" And I almost fell off my chair laughing. And I thanked him for, I said it was the greatest compliment I'd ever received. But here's the thing. Jerry was one of the very few people, including Jim and Susie, but Jerry was one of the very few people who stayed friends with me after I made that transition. Because most people, when they go through something like that, their friends can't deal with them anymore because they're not reacting the way they're supposed to. But Jerry stayed my friend, and our friendship got better and deeper and stronger after that. Now, some of you know that my daughter Stacy has begun to carve out a fairly successful acting career in Los Angeles, speaking of competition. And after she got the news about Jerry, we were talking, and she said, it's like part of my childhood is gone. She said, I can't remember a time when Jerry wasn't there. He watched me grow up. And then she thought a moment, and she said, and then when I graduated from college, I got to do a show with him, and I felt like I had grown up. About 3 years ago, I started a Facebook group for local actors who are also Ranger fans. No? Wait, some things I say do make sense. To go out to games a couple of times a month, get together away from the pressure of the theater, and just have a good time. Jerry was one of the first people who signed up. Jerry adored his Rangers. For his 75th birthday, my wife Lynn and I gave him his own custom Texas Ranger jersey with number 75 on the back and Jer, J-E-R, above. And he wore it with pride. And that booming voice of his served him well at the ballpark. There was a day game about 2 years ago, and things were not going well for the Rangers. And along about the 8th inning, Jerry began to think that the crowd was not sufficiently into the game. Without so much as shifting in his seat, he got into, "Let's go Rangers! Let's go Rangers!" On the third downbeat, 20,000 people all started screaming it with him simultaneously. I have spent my life in stadiums, and I've never heard a crowd do that before or since, but they all started cheering at once. And when the crowd began to die down, I turned, and Jerry had that little smile on his face. And I looked at him and I said, damn, you can even direct by remote control. One game earlier this year, I put a group together, but I got cast in a show, and I couldn't go because I had a rehearsal conflict. So I put a note up on the bulletin board that said, guys, I can't go. So whoever wants my ticket can have it. Jerry called me. He said, it's early in the rehearsal process. Just tell him you have a conflict and you can go to the game. I said, I can't believe the producer, director, founder of Stage West is telling me to skip rehearsal to go to a baseball game. He said, hell, I do it all the time. But then he added, I only do it as an actor, never as a director. Our last game with Jerry, indeed our last time with Jerry, came not long after Wendy vaulted to national prominence because of her courageous filibuster in the state Senate. And it also came at the time when my daughter's television series Bunheads was canceled by ABC Family, the morons. But Jerry and I sat in the park on a lovely summer night watching the game, talking about our daughters and their accomplishments and how proud we were of them. And I turned to him and I said, you know who we are, don't you? And he said, who? I said, we're the charter members of the Outdone by Our Daughters Club. And Wendy, I tell you right now, we were both very proud to be members. So let me sum this up in an almost sacred baseball way. There is one thing I can tell you, and that is that after 30 years of sharing baseball games and stages and friendship with Jerry Russell, today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And now, let's join the voice of the ballpark, Texas Rangers public address announcer, Chuck Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Texas Rangers Baseball Club, we ask you to please stand and join in one last 7-inning stretch in memory of Part4 theater legend and dedicated Texas Rangers fan, Gerald Russell. With Leonard performing on piano, let's all sing a cherry-like rendition of Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Ball game, take me out with the crowd. Bodies of peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me through. Root for the Rangers. If they don't win, it's a shame. 'Cause it's 1, 2, 3, strike, jump! The old ball game.